about identity. I think
Yeah.
you're hoping usually 8 weeks through the season that the team finds some sense of identity. And I think early on you could point things out because this team was offensively scoring at least 30 points. So this was a team where you could count on they're going to score 30 points a game. Defensively, you're limiting opponents to 15 points a game on average. Defensively, you could utilize that bend don't break mentality, that kind of thing. You could adjust to them, where even if teams were getting yards, they weren't scoring points. And now I think you have a little bit of a shift. This is the first game where the 49ers have given up over 30 points. Up until this one, defensively, you talk about bend don't break. They haven't really given up many points despite giving up more yards in certain games. That wasn't the case in this one. They gave up 31 points. And offensively, I think the biggest issue over the last 3 weeks is you go from 30 points a game in in 5 straight games, and then now the last 3 games in a row, you don't score more than 20 points. You score 17 points in 3 straight games. That's an issue. A lot of people want to point to the 49ers defensively. There's issues there. Steve Wilkes has issues there, and the dynamic seems off right now. And maybe that's affecting the identity. But it's not just a defensive issue. That's one thing I want to point out. It's an offensive issue too. You're not seeing as many points being put up on the board. They're only 17 in each of the last 3 games. And it's not like they don't have opportunities. They're driving down the field certain times. You're just turning the ball over. You're missing a field goal. There's certain issues, penalties that arise that have stopped the 49ers from reaching what their identity is supposed to be. So right now, I think this is a team searching for an identity. And the one that they had at the beginning of the season right now, they're trying to get that back.
I agree. And I feel like coming into the season on that win streak, I think they had a bit of a different identity than we're used to under the Kyle Shanahan regime. I've always considered the 49ers identity to be their strong run game, a dominant defense, and like a total physicality on both sides of the ball, like and all out. I always whenever I think of the 49ers identity, I think of how they practice and the standards that they hold their players to. Former players have often talked about this. Kyle Shanahan has talked about this. And it's supposedly even the reason that Brandon Ayuk originally was in the doghouse was because in practice, the level of physicality that they expect their players to bring is on another level. They really want to make sure you're not avoiding contact, you're running 100%, you're tackling 100%, no matter what the circumstance is. And that's been like a standard that the 49ers under Kyle Shanahan have really held. And I think it's been kind of shocking to see. And maybe that's why more focus has been put on the defense, is because as fans, we're used to seeing the defense be so dominant in those specific areas. Even if they're giving up points, they're diving, they're tackling as hard as possible. It's usually if we're thinking back to like last year, it's like the Chiefs kind of diced them up, but that was less about them looking stagnant and slow and more about the Chiefs themselves looking dominant, where it's been kind of confusing seeing the 49ers defense almost and offense, both sides of the ball, almost look like they're the ones stopping themselves. It doesn't necessarily look like the other team is doing so well that they're, just beating them. It looks like and Kyle Shanahan even said in his press conference today at 3 that they seemed on film tired and slow. And he was saying it in regards of like looking forward to the bye week. But in my opinion, that's a little bit unacceptable because that it hasn't just been something that they've shown this week. And even with the bye week coming, you can't just be like, okay, well, we're going to mail it in this. And he wasn't saying that. He was just, I think calling attention to the fact that there is injuries. But all these teams are suffering with injuries at this time of the year. And the 49ers still have a plethora of talent that's not living up to, one, their contracts, and two, just the identity that they've given themselves so far. So um maybe I could start there by asking you, what do you think is going on with this 49ers run game? Why do you think it's so inefficient before we get into the defense?
I like you pointing that out. I mean, I think that there was a couple of things. Kyle Shanahan actually talked about it earlier this week, and I think that he brought up some good points. I think one thing that he pointed out with the run game is not being able to create as much space. He also thought that he got away from the run game in the second half this week. And despite this game really being a one-score game for a majority of this second half, up until the Bengals were able to pull away there with their second touchdown, there were chances to run the football. 49ers just didn't do so. think some of those issues were there after you saw a couple of good runs in the first half. But I think it's a variety of things. One, you're missing two of your most physical players in Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel. That obviously changes things. Trent Williams, you look statistically, the 49ers run a lot better to their left side. And that's because Trent Williams is there. That opens up outside zone runs and things like that. George Kittle pointed out the other day how he thought this Niner team, when he was here and when he's been here, he pointed out how outside zone has kind of been a huge concept, and that's not something that they've kind of gone to as much before. His real quote was, "One of the best things we do is run the football, and we just put ourselves in situations where we can't run the football." And
Oh yeah, yeah, I
because the
heard that.
49ers have had penalties on first down, second down, it's second and 20, first and 20, you can't run the football as much. So I think it's some of those self-inflicted wounds where you're penalizing yourself, and then you take away one side. And the one way teams have beaten the Niners is making them one-dimensional. The run game has lost a bit of his identity recently, and Christian McCaffrey is also injured. And so I think that there's a number of things. I like how you bring up the topic because I think this is an underrated topic. You're missing physicality. Brett
Mhm.
Williams, Deebo Samuel. You're missing the guy who you usually run to the left side with and get a lot of success out of. You're also missing your most physical runner in Deebo Samuel because they don't play
Mhm.
Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason that much. You're
And
missing.
really quick,
Go
both of
ahead.
those players, both of those players have also, and this is more philosophy than actual like play base, but other players on the team and Kyle Shanahan has addressed like Debo Samuel as like the heartbeat of the team. I know in 2020 when he really took over, Kyle Shanahan would always say the team goes how Debo goes. And same thing with Trent Williams. If you think back to last year when they would walk out with the boombox, I'm pretty sure they probably still do it this year,
Yeah.
but I know it was really iconic the last 2 years. Trent Williams and Debo Samuel were the guys who would walk out kind of leading that charge or confidence, setting that tone, which I think all those things, like I said, they're kind of woo-woo based because it's just words. But I do think that that matters to the team. And when we're talking about Kyle saying like, okay, they're looking a little stagnant, they're looking a little slow, I think missing two of the most pivotal uh, motivation based guys is probably actually an important loss that aside from just their play, like they're great players, but also you're missing that like emotional uh, grit that they bring.
No doubt. I also think, though, the more important thing is San Francisco should still win. I think they should win without both of those guys in some of these games. And so I think that that's another important thing. San Francisco still got to win these games. And so I do think that that's one factor. But you talk about penalties and things like that backing you up. Those can't happen to the extent that they're happening. And I think that goes to discipline, similar to turnovers and things like that. That goes to discipline. And the 49ers need to improve on that. And that starts up top. And so I think it's a variety of things. I think the run game needs to improve. But I also think Christian McCaffrey isn't at 100% right now. The oblique injury, those take a while to heal from.
Yeah.
And I don't know how smart it was to play him through it. Now you get a whole bye week to continue. And so hopefully you come out of it, re-energized and things like that. Shanahan said they played slow on tape. You don't want to play slow with the Niners. You want to play fast and physical.
Mm-hmm.